Hi everyone, welcome to chapter 6 of the Transition to Leading Others module, and this week we'll be doing problem solving and decision making. Just before we kick off with that, just a reminder, it is the 25th of March if you're watching this today, and so your assignments are due. I hope that they are all in and all submitted. If they have not, you have until close of business today, the 25th, to submit. So please submit. I look forward to getting your assignments and marking them. Okay, so what are we going to do this week? We spoke last week around the mental self, which was one facet of the self. So this week we want to discuss mental abilities in terms of problem solving, in terms of creativity, and also decision making. And we're going to do this in quite a bit of detail, and we're going to talk a little bit around the skill of creativity. So that you can recognize that problem solving is quite a vital management skill, and we can also look at the different types of creativity techniques that we get. Okay, so first things first, what is a problem? What do we understand what a problem is? How do we define a problem? So I'm pretty sure we've all come across problems. So my 7-year-old daughter's biggest problem is how quick can she get dressed in the morning to get to school. That's the biggest problem that she faces in life. And so in the morning we go, okay, you've got to get up and you've got to dress as quick as you can. And for her, it's a big thing because she has to put on her clothes and put on her school dress and put on her school shirt and put on her socks and her shoes. And so she tends to dawdle quite a bit. And so you'll see that she'll take 20 minutes to dress and makes everyone late for work. And we always shout and go, this is your biggest problem, you need to deal with it. How do you deal with it? And I mean, that's just a little example. It's also to show that not everyone has the same problems. My biggest problem is that every week when I decide about how to do your videos or to do the audio, what things do I focus on, what things can you read in the textbook, and how do I make decisions around that. Your problems might be very, very different. So think about what problems you've encountered, and for us, problems are usually a question or a matter involving doubt or uncertainty or difficulty. It's also a description in terms of a negative condition, so that exists instead of the desired but realistic and achievable condition that we'd like. It's also a deviation between a targeted and an actual situation. So you see there's a lovely story about the problems of the frog. If you put a frog into hot water, it jumps out because it feels it. But if you put it into cold water and you heat it up slowly, it will adapt to the change in temperature, but then it becomes a boiled frog. So the moral of the story is be careful you don't become a boiled frog, simply because we don't realize that there is actually a problem and we adapt to it and adjust to it. And we're so flexible that we don't recognize that there is a problem anymore. And that in itself is a problem. So we get two types of problems. We get a structured problem and we get an unstructured problem. The structured problems happen quite frequently. They're often well known to the decision maker, and so every time you come across, you're like, oh, same problem, I'll sort it out. One of the things that I always have a problem with, which is I think a structured problem for me, is that when I drive on the roads, there's always nails in the road and they always get into my tires, and then I come across the problem of having a flat tire. And then I'm look at it and I go, oh, do I have to change the tire myself? Can I get someone to help me? So I've learned to change the tire myself, because I've learned to adapt to that problem. So that's a structured problem because it happens quite frequently. I know how to respond to it. If it's an unstructured problem, though, it's a little bit more difficult, simply because they don't occur frequently. They occur quite rarely. They're unusual problems, and it's often quite complex. So the answer isn't just there and we can snap our fingers and go, okay, this is how you fix it. So one of the unstructured problems that you might encounter is that you've never used the internet before, you've never done distance education before, and now you have to adapt and learn and solve the problem of trying to sort out ICANN, going onto ICANN, finding your lecturer's videos, and trying to learn in that way. So think about what kinds of problems you've encountered. Have they been structured? Have they been unstructured? How have you responded to that? Because if you're a leader, we must remember this is the course around transitioning to leading others. If you're a leader, how do you deal with structured problems? How do you deal with unstructured problems? Okay, now we think about it. We have a problem that's presented to us. And we need to decide, how do we approach the problem? Do we have a hands-on approach that says, okay, this is how we fix it? Or do we have a step-by-step process to say this is how we fix it? Or do we have to think about the problem a little bit and go, okay, what are the factors that are affecting this problem? This is where creativity comes into place, because what usually happens is when we face with a problem, we either get afraid or we're uncomfortable and we don't want to deal with the problem, so we wish it away. We also think we need to maybe find an answer quite quickly and then it has to be the right answer, or we look for someone to blame. So one of the things that I've had to get used to is that I'm quite used to lecturing to thousands of students face to face. So there's a lecture venue and I walk into the lecture venue and I teach my students. One of the things that I've had to deal with is going, I talk to you through a screen, or I talk to you via email, or I talk to you via the phone. It may not necessarily be a problem, but it's something that I've had to adapt to, and it's something that I've had to become comfortable with. But how have I become comfortable with it? Well, I've become quite comfortable just in terms of making you videos in a space that's familiar to me. So most of the time when you see me in this video, it's because I'm sitting at home typing myself in my study. You'll very rarely see me sitting at work doing it, just because there's lots of people around. I don't want people watching me while I do my videos. So I've had to be quite creative in that respect. And I'm hoping that you learn from those videos. But problem solving is a management tool that we all have to have, and we also have to have it just in terms of how we lead others. So the biggest challenge for us is to ensure that we don't make quick decisions that are the incorrect decisions, that we deliberate, that we understand what the context is, that we understand what the situation is. And this is why we need to be quite creative, because it helps us to think out of the box. It helps us to approach problems in different ways and to find different ways to solve the problem. And so if we want to be successful creative thinkers, we need to have a different attitude towards our problems, and we need to try to view problems as opportunities. One of the other things is that we need to have the time. We need to take enough time to solve the problem. So we need to understand, what are the facts, what is the situation, what is the context. We need to ask questions about the problem. How did it come about? Who's involved? What happened? What tasks were involved? We need to understand how that problem came about. And we need to have a bit of imagination. We have to not stick to the known. So we need to explore the unknown, and we need to then scale them down to practical ideas. And then we have to be careful of tunnel vision. What do we mean by that? Is that we only look at the problem in one way, and we don't look left, we don't look right. We don't say, okay, there are other ways of looking, so other directions that we can come from. And then also using a combination of things to solve problems, and that will make us more creative thinkers. I'm one of those people, I'm not very creative, and if I think creativity, I think people drawing and painting and making beautiful colors and beautiful pieces of art and music and beautiful pieces of words. So people tend to be creative in different ways because they think out of the box, they've got a different attitude. And so the points that I've discussed here are guidance for us in terms of how do we become successful creative thinkers. If we're working in organizations, what are the things, or one of the things that we need to look at is how do we encourage other people to be creative? And one of the ways is to brainstorm ideas. So you're confronted with a problem, and there may be 7 different ways of doing things. We must brainstorm those ideas. So we present the problem, we encourage people to present the problem positively, and then we seek oral responses. We get people to call out what ideas or suggestions that they have. If we were sitting in a classroom right now, I would be, and this is something that I'm going to do in our discussion forums, I'm going to present you with a problem, and I want you to just drop ideas and brainstorm with me, how can we fix it? And then what we'll do is we evaluate those recorded ideas, and then we rate the responses, and then we look at it in a very practical way. Some people will mind map what they'll do. So they'll take a piece of paper and they'll draw, and they'll have different lines leading to different ideas and different opinions, which is also quite a nice way of approaching problems, but also putting your problems down onto paper and your ideas onto paper. What happens then is, if we have all these ideas to solve the problem, we then need to make a decision about how we're going to deal with the problem based on the ideas that we present or that we've thought about. And so there's a decision-making process. There are 8 steps to it. We have to identify the problem. We have to define the problem. We have to gather the information about the problem. We have to identify the causes. We have to determine the objectives. We have to select the best alternative. And then we have to implement it and evaluate the results. And this is something that is in your textbook, and I want you to go through and understand and familiarize yourself with, because it is important for us to go through that decision-making process. Also, what kinds of factors would then influence decision-making? So we've been creative around the ideas and how to approach the problem. Now we need to make a decision. So we have to decide on what or how it makes us feel. We have to see what resources we have, what kinds of pressures there are around the problem, what needs and wants there are, and then also what values. And probably most important is our attitude towards the problem. A lot of the time we see problems as negative, but it might be that we can actually solve the problem in quite a positive light and make it something positive. One of the things that I struggle with is procrastination. So a problem will present itself, and I'll sit there and look at it, and I'll go, I'm not quite sure how to do this. I'll leave it for later. It's okay. And the problem just manifests and becomes bigger and bigger and bigger until I'm sitting with like a range of problems, and then I go, I should have just sorted it out in the beginning. So procrastination is mostly the tendency to delay and postpone, which I do quite often, and I'm sure some of you do too. But that causes other problems and creates other problems for us. So we must make sure that we see the problem, we identify the problem, and then we act based on what creative ideas we have or what we generate to solve the problem, and we must make a decision then on how we do it. So I've run through this chapter quite quickly. It's quite a short chapter in the textbook as well, but please go through the activities that are there. I know sometimes you guys don't want to talk to me on email or talk to me via phone, and you work on your own and through the material. I want you to know that you're not on your own, that I am here to guide you, obviously, and I'm here on this journey with you. So please go through the activities as well. There's the one about the frog. There's the one about how we see problems as problems. There's one around what structured and unstructured problems you've encountered. And maybe that's quite nice just in terms of brainstorming ideas on how to fix those problems. And then there's obviously a nice little case study here in terms of what information is necessary for the person to make a decision. Because what you want to do is make an informed decision. So have a look at those activities, have a look at what's in the textbook as well, and look out for the discussion forums. You all have been very, very quiet on the discussion forums. I'd love to engage with you on the discussion forums. So please, 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 if you have the time, go and click in on the links that are already there for the past couple of weeks and the discussion forums that are there. And also look out for the one that I'm going to post this week. Remember, if you haven't submitted your assignment, do so urgently because it is due today, the 25th. But if you have already submitted, well done on submitting. That's one assignment down, one more to go. And then obviously marks will be released once I've done the marking. Okay, have a good week and I'll see you soon. Bye.